That's a good way to start.
Oh my goddess.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm here with you, Waylon Lewis. I can't believe I die. I'm so excited. And before we get into this, why don't we take a deep breath?
Sounds good.
And give it away. Good times.
Thank you for that.
Oh yeah, I knew I was going to do that a long time ago. So we had kind of gone back and forth about what we were going to talk about, and then I told you I wanted to say how we met, but first of all, the title for this podcast is going to be something like empathy, ego, and veganism. And when I ran into you yesterday, you were like, we're not going to talk about veganism? And I was like, isn't that kind of obvious? And you were like, so? And you were right. So we should definitely talk about that.
Well, because you said empathy in the environment, which
is
great.
Yeah.
And I was like, but.
Yeah, okay, so I'm thinking like we'll intertwine, like, because they all mirror each other, like I was saying earlier, ego, empathy, veganism, they're all the same. But for me, this episode isn't about encouraging veganism as it is about starting a dialogue about how to navigate through your daily emotions of empathy and ego. And once you can better understand that, it should lead you to veganism at some point. You feel me?
I'm at your service.
Okay. So how we met, I always like to talk about this because I don't want to seem elusive online and like I'm just came out of nowhere and started building something and that will hopefully be very successful one day. But I know there's a lot of women just like me who want to do cool shit and they don't know how and they don't feel like they can because they see perfect stuff online. Uh-huh. So here's how we met. It was a freak thing. You probably don't remember this. I messaged you or I tagged you on Instagram when I was listening to your podcast, Mindful Life. And you shared it, which you're really good about sharing stuff when you're tagged. And I was like, what? I'm so excited. And then after that, I saw you at the Boulder Library, but I was busy chasing my child. And you were talking to a friend, as usual. And I was like, that's Waylon Lewis. That's Waylon Lewis. So I messaged you. I was like, were you at the library? And you're like, yeah. And then we started talking on DM, and then I ran into you at the park randomly and asked you to be on my podcast, and you said yes, and I couldn't believe it. And this is how we're going to get to know each other real quick. When you said that you would be on my podcast at the park, I cried on the way home.
Oh. Well, can I give a tip for all the would-be podcaster ladies or moms out there, like you were saying is your audience?
Yeah.
So I said yes, but that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You followed up.
Yeah.
And made it happen.
So that came from a good friend of mine who I talked to you about before, who's super businessy, amazing, has all these successful endeavors. I called her and I was like, I just ran into Waylon Lewis. He said he would be on my podcast. I'm crying. And she was like, you're only crying because you care. And then the next day she was like, okay, enough fangirling, set the date.
Nice.
I was like, okay.
Wow. She's a business coach or life coach?
No, she's a friend of mine. She's going to be on the podcast in September.
Well, good on her. Set the date.
Mm-hmm. Set the date. And then, where did I...
Because I say yes to a lot of things and half mean them, honestly.
But you have so many things going on. I think if someone didn't get in your inbox, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So, but then
you made it happen.
But I followed up with you online. I was like, let's set the date. And then you were like, email Vanessa.
Yeah.
And then, she's so sweet. And then we made it happen. And then I ran into a snooze, and then I ran into a breakfast place, and then I ran into you yesterday. It's so weird. And I know it's no big deal for you because you have so many friends around here, but I literally don't know anyone. So for me to keep running into you, of all people, is freaky to me. And so I was like, I have to do this episode. So that's how it came to be. And we're here to talk about ego, empathy, and veganism. So I wanted to start by asking you how you went vegan.
How I went vegan?
Yeah, when and how did it, what was the click?
Do you want the short version, the medium-sized version, or the full version?
Whatever you feel compelled to share.
I'm at your service.
Okay.
So it's up to you.
Let's do the medium version.
Okay, the medium version would be I moved in with my ex-girlfriend Rose, who helped start what would become Elephant Magazine with me. And she was a lifelong vegetarian her whole life. And she was a kickboxing champion of the UK. She was super active. So she was healthy. She knew how to do this stuff in a healthy way. Mm-hmm. She wasn't vegan. I, at the time, was only eating meat when I knew the source and I felt good about it. And at that time, this is a long time ago, I'm an old person, even that was super rare, especially for a man. And so I was living with her in my cottage up in Chautauqua, and she moved in, and it was like too small for 2 people basically. It was okay, but it was tight. And the kitchen we had to share. So, meat, vegetarian, different cutting boards, different pans, pots. I was like, to hell with it.
Yeah.
Like literally the first day she moved in, I was like, I'll just be vegetarian at home. I'll eat out. We have amazing farm to table restaurants here where you know what farm you're getting what from. And at the time I felt like that was
enough.
That was pretty hard for me to figure out the sourcing. Like, if you eat at Mountain Sun or most places, just a restaurant over here, they either tell you where it's from or you have no idea and you have to ask, and that's awkward, and it's a lot of work.
That's the vortex of veganism. So many people are just blanketed plants and not sourcing. Or veganism and mindful living is a black hole, a rabbit hole, but it's joyous.
Joyous black hole.
It is. It's a whole thing. You just get deeper and deeper and deeper.
Right.
You know that.
Yeah.
So go on.
Yeah. So I became vegetarian at home, and because it was healthy and it wasn't just taking stuff out, which a lot of new vegans or vegetarians just take the meat or the eggs or the dairy out.
Yeah.
And then they're like, what? All I'm eating is pasta and white bread. This sucks. I'm not healthy.
It's just lack of education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was healthy. It was yummy. It was great. It was home cooked at home. I was like, maybe I'll just be vegetarian because I'm fully grown. I'm 6'2". I don't need this stuff. And if anything, it's actually healthier, which at the time was revolutionary to think taking meat out would be healthier. We think meat, we need it, right? For protein or whatever.
Well, decades of advertising shoved down your throat, obvi.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I became vegetarian, and it was actually easy-ish. I remember literally storming out, I'm like a big boy, temper tantrum. Vanessa knows this, I'm gesturing at her.
Sounds terrifying.
I stormed out of Hapa, the sushi restaurant, where I realized I couldn't eat anything that was my favorite. So it wasn't really all easy. And I didn't storm out on anyone. I stormed out on myself. I was like, oh my God, I can't eat anything I like here. And so it was hard in moments, but overall, I'm Buddhist, and I felt like, okay, not killing for fun. If it's not that hard, I'm down, I'm in. And dairy is much better, right? Eggs are much better. You're not killing anything, right? So for 6 years or something, that's what I did.
You were vegetarian for 6 years.
I was vegetarian.
Okay.
And then I wanted to become vegan, but I was super intimidated by it. Because
same.
At the time, this is 11 years ago or something, no one, again, especially men, there wasn't that much resources. I mean, Instagram didn't exist. There weren't, Elephant had recipes and stuff, but my website, but it was intimidating. So I went vegan with a couple of my editors at Elephant, and we blogged about it.
Cool.
And the inspiration for me going vegan, making that switch, was I wrote a blog, it's still on elephantjournal.com, titled, If You're Vegetarian, You're Not Vegetarian. And it was, in the writing of it, I turned vegan. I basically did what we all know now as vegans, which is, if you're eating eggs, you're directly killing millions of male chicks.
Right.
In an awful way. Like, seriously.
Ground alive
the
on a
cute
conveyor
little
belt.
chicks that are on the Hallmark cards that you're giving people for Easter are ground up alive.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Or smothered in bags.
Smothered in bags?
Yeah, they literally put them in bags and just kill them. They put them in a compactor. And
I did not know that.
And they, suffocate often, obviously. And then, same with cows. If you're just getting milk, not only, I don't mean to be graphic, and I'm not trying to convert anyone.
This is a real space. We tell the truth.
Boom.
But with no hate, but we tell the truth.
No hate, truth.
No hate speech,
That's
truth.
good guidelines. So just the fact, Jack, if you're a feminist, you really can't.
You can't be a feminist unless you're vegan.
You can't have milk.
Yeah.
Particularly milk, because the female cows are forcibly impregnated, which is a fancy word of saying raped, repeatedly their whole life, so that they are lactating, creating milk. There's machines hooked up to their nipples. You know how intense and painful it can be in the best of circumstances to give milk to your baby, just to get bitten. It's so, the swelling, all that. So cows are hooked up, it's raw, it's disease, blah, blah. I won't go too into it, so don't tune out.
Overly engorged, which is painful.
And what happens to the babies?
They're taken away.
Cows have best friends. Cows love their young. Cows are super emotional
They
and actually
mourn.
they're like big dogs.
And
They're-
they carry their young
they're
for
big
9
sweeties.
months. 9 months.
And so the cows, the baby calves are taken away. They aren't, you shouldn't call them veal. They're actually little calves.
They're babies.
And they're put in these plastic pens often where they're freezing, they don't have any, and they're alone. I mean, imagine doing that to babies. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then they're killed. So literally, I realized, wow, if you have milk, you're killing. If you have eggs, you're killing. If you have cheese, you're killing. If you have ice cream, you're killing. It's not vegetarian. I actually don't think there is a thing called vegetarian in my mind.
It was a cultural expression.
There's killing, and if you're okay with that, I respect that. You know, I don't agree with it, but I respect it.
How can you respect that?
Because it's someone's choice, right?
I mean, I know, but it just comes down to a lack of perspective and a closed mind and closed heart.
Here's where I say I disagree with it.
Yeah.
I would be open to talking with anyone who eats meat, but
Yeah.
I know I'm not in charge of their opinion or their view or their diet. So I respect it. I don't agree with it, and I think those are two very different things. We have to remember that. I respect Trump fans. I don't agree with them. I really legitimately respect them.
They all have the same mission, in that most of us all have the same mission, in that we love our families, we love our country, we want the best, and we've gone about that in different ways. We had the same intention to start with. I think that's what's to remember between
people are really
red
good.
and blue.
And the only thing I don't respect, is Vanessa knows I rant about this all the time, is if you actually have the information.
Yeah.
And then you don't change, that is really cold. It's really cold.
That is a really good word for that. And that happens, I mean, people know. I mean, there's internet, it's almost 2020. People know it's not a big secret. The jig is up.
Yeah, but you'd be amazed. I mean, it's not like they're talking about veganism on Fox News.
Well, yeah, Fox News is not real news, it's just entertainment news.
They're not talking about the Amazon on Instagram until it becomes hip to talk about it.
Oh my gosh. That makes me sick.
They're not talking about the melting glaciers on top of the Himalayas that are going to cause half the people on the planet not to have water.
Mm-hmm. Immigration.
Because it's not on Instagram. Journalism reports on this stuff. So if you care about the world and you don't want more dictators like Bolsonaro or Trump, read journalism.
Read Elephant Journal.
Yeah, but journalism is even higher. I respect journalism so much. We do some journalism. We do a lot of beautiful, genuine stories. But journalism, investigative reporting, that is way above what we do.
I feel like
it's okay to say that.
The normal person, like, meaning someone who's not had impressions made on them that's brought them into this mindful lifestyle, I feel like they don't really know where to get good information. So to just find one good thing.
New York Times.
Okay, so that's great advice.
Guardian.
Okay.
PBS. BBC. Like, basically anything that's not a conglomerate, corporate-owned bullshit, right?
Yeah.
So New York Times is family owned. They make mistakes. They call themselves out on those mistakes. They're not always perfect. No one is.
I didn't know that they did that.
Is anyone always perfect? Anyone?
No, of course not.
Oh, sorry. Little belly? Is that sexy?
If we're going to pause, I'm going to pull it.
We're not pausing. We're just adjusting my belly.
Well, I can edit your out of the audio. I can just pull your belly off.
Is anyone perfect? Just leave it.
That was good timing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I went vegan after I had a baby.
Can we rewind?
Yeah.
When did you go vegan?
When I had a baby. I was vegetarian for 3 years. So in my first teacher training, my 200-hour training, they made us watch slaughterhouse videos. And everyone left. People were just sobbing and dropping like flies. And it was just me and one other person sitting next to each other on the floor, leaning against the wall, like with our face melting off. And I couldn't believe what I was watching, but I couldn't look away.
Were you at Jiva Mukti or something?
No, that's so funny that you say that. Actually, one of my mentors studied at Jiva Mukti in New York. No, it was in Wilmington, North Carolina. So then I went vegetarian immediately. I never looked back. And my husband was still a meat eater, but not like I eat meat, I want to barbecue every day, I'll never go any other way. He was like eating like deli meat and corn dogs and just like convenient food. Like he was like an unhealthy meat eater, if you know what I mean?
Sure.
Extra unhealthy meat eater, and
sure.
with all the processed. So eventually I just decided I'm not going to make him food with meat anymore or buy food for him with meat anymore. And he significantly dropped his intake because a lot of people ask me, how'd you get your husband to go vegan? And I didn't.
He's vegan now?
He's vegan, yeah.
Wow.
It was totally his choice. So first it started with me just not handling meat because I was just grossed out and it smelled gross and...
It was totally my choice. I'm the husband.
Everyone says that. Everyone's like, all my family would be like, so... how much do you want to eat some meat? He's like, he's full on, like he's
nice.
Disgusted by meat and dairy. So, so he ate a little bit of meat and then I was vegetarian and then we moved to, Oregon and Tillamook cheese and dairy and ice cream. We were about 4 miles from the farm, from the dairy farm. So it would be freezing, like the ground would be frozen. It was like, there was snow on the ground. It was insane, so cold. And there was these tiny little shivering calves in these like weird little like igloo type domes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were just, I was like, that's so weird. I was like, that's so many calves in there. It was like, as far as the eye could see.
Yeah.
And it was just like muddy and disgusting and it reeked. The whole town reeked in the summer.
Yeah.
And I was like, they look so cold. Like they were just skinny and sad and I was like a dangerous highway and I thought about pulling over every single time I passed it. But this was before I even went vegan. So then what happened is I had my daughter 3 months in, I watched What the Health on Netflix and learned about how gross dairy is. And also I was nursing at the time and it was a no-brainer. I was like, how could any mother who has nursed do this, pay for this? And to me, it was just that simple. Like I've always been, Josh always says I'm an easy sell. But if something to me is right, it's right. Like I'm not like wishy-washy. Like I'm either like this is right or this is wrong for the most part in my life, and I don't look back. So I went vegan. I told Josh he needed to go watch What the Health. Okay, this is gonna get real for a second. I told Josh he needed to go watch What the Health, and he was like, okay, I'll watch it tomorrow. And I was like, well, I just watched it, and I'm disgusted, and I'm going vegan tomorrow. And he was like, okay, I'm pretty grossed out by cheese too. True story, gave him a blowjob right then and there.
Wow.
I was so excited.
Ratings are going up.
I was so excited I couldn't
Except
believe
for
it.
all the grandmas just left.
Oh well.
Your family's out.
They've seen it all. They've done it all. So anyway, yeah, I was like, there was no pushback at all. I couldn't believe it. And the next day we completely emptied our fridge pretty much and just gave food away to friends.
So that could be like the new incentive for, going vegan, whether it's the wife or the husband or the, either partner.
True story. Sex sells.
2 husbands, 2 wives.
Whatever
Any
your jive.
combination.
Wives and wives. Whatever. So yeah, it happened, and then it's never been an issue. We're just like totally vegan. At first I ate like a lot of salads and chips, and I was like really hungry and had no color in my face. And then I was like, okay. So I got on Pinterest and learned a little something.
Right.
And now my meals are better than ever. But it can be challenging going out, but you have to learn the places. My mom asked me, is it so hard going to the grocery store? And I was like, no, because I go down like 3 aisles. The grocery store is easier than it's ever been for me because I know what brands are good. And I think it's important to say that just like with anything, some brands suck. Like some vegan cheese is nasty and some is the bomb. So you just have to try it all. So I want to shift gears
What do you recommend?
Chow. I
Chow.
love Chow.
Although they just got bought last year or 2 years ago.
By who?
I don't remember, but some way bigger company. So I anticipate eventually they'll get worse.
Okay. Well, I also like Go Veggie.
Them.
Have you tried Go Veggie? I like their pepper jack. And then we always get the cheese wheels and do like wine nights on a pallet in the living room.
From who?
It's like Milano or something like that.
Miyoko.
Yeah, that one.
The best.
So good. The chives one is the bomb.
Her butter is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like kind of greasy, but in a good way.
Well, you gotta leave it in the fridge.
Yeah.
It's not like normal butter. You leave it. I've done that a few times. Leave it out. So it's like,
Yeah, you don't do that. So here's the thing. When I did my advanced teacher training, I was 6 months pregnant at the end of that, which was a year long. And one of my mentors was full on vegan. She studied at Jivamukti, and she only ever spoke about it one time. And she just basically said, I used to be an activist, and a lot of my old Jivamukti friends don't like that I'm not anymore. But she was like, I know it to be true for me, and that's enough for me right now. And she was just so humble and sweet about it that when I did decide to go vegan, I was like, we have very different personalities, so I was like full on, like aggressive activist, but then I remembered her, And it kind of changed things for me. So especially with this podcast, I don't want to ever push anyone away, but I'm not going to like pretend like things aren't real, because that would be doing a disservice to the community.
Sure.
I mean, if I'm going to build something from nothing, it's going to be what I want without any of the hoopla. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I want to change gears. Yeah, with elephants. So I want to change gears.
Just to prevent you from changing gears yet again, I would say most of the vegan substitutes are not important to being vegan.
True.
Like eating real food that's super yummy, like tacos or whatever. You can use real food. Like Michael Pollan approved outside of the ring of the grocery store, not packaged, not processed, not plastic packaged.
Great point.
Some of those subs, like the butter, which comes in wax paper from Miyoko, are amazing. But you don't have to do substitutes. It's fine to start with that stuff.
It's a good transition to plant-based
It's fine to
meats.
enjoy it occasionally, but
I think what a lot of people don't understand is that it's easier for the body to digest plants. And so once you take that heaviness and the inflammation out of your body, if you were to go back, it's just like a rock in your stomach, and I feel like that's very telling.
Yeah. It's also disgusting, weirdly. And I don't mean that from a vegan point of view. When I try to eat chicken or butter or whatever, it's happened a few times. I've been served it accidentally,
Me too.
and I'm like, well, I'm not going to throw it away. That's even worse.
You eat it?
I tried, and I literally couldn't do it.
It's like The Walking Dead. It's how I feel.
You're like, wow, I feel like I'm eating flesh.
Yeah, I feel
And then
like...
you're like, I am eating flesh.
Yeah.
And then, I feel like I'm eating eggs. Feel like this weird, congealed throw up when you're not used to it. It's a little bit like smoking or something. If you quit it, suddenly you're like, that is the most disgusting thing ever.
Anyway, so I stopped eating eggs because I was just grossed out by them after having a baby. Just one of those things. I always tell people who are like, I have a bunch of kids, we are heavy meat eaters, I want to transition, I don't know what to do. I was like, just buy the plant-based alternatives to start and rethink what your plate looks like. The sections, I grew up on
recipes.
steak. Yeah.
Just do it.
So it's actually very freeing being vegan and not limiting in the way that people think. Can I change gears now?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to hear what's at the tip of your brain in regards to empathy and ego on this subject.
Empathy and ego. Say a little more.
Say a little more. Okay, so obviously we're in a society that is very ego driven without even thinking twice about it.
Ego driven.
Yeah, ego driven. And it wasn't until I could understand my ego better that it humbled me enough to live a completely different life. A much more relaxing life, because my actions and my thought process, my thought patterns were not conflicting with my morals anymore. And it was like all of a sudden I was in harmony in my own body. Like my mind and my in my belly and all of it. And so I think to check your own ego helps you to have empathy for others. And if you are starting off with having empathy for others, I think the ego, you can go two ways. Like you can either be self-depreciating, I love all the people, or you can be like, I'm the best, and even though I do things that aren't great, I'm still the best. You know what I mean?
Not really.
All right, well...
Lost me at the end there.
There you go!
No, but the rest was great. I'm sure it all was great. You are too fast for me. You kids. I think that's a really good way of putting it. So ego versus empathy, kind of.
Yeah.
So it's like a teeter-totter. I think, first of all, from a Buddhist point of view, that's the tradition I've been raised in, the ego is not a problem. You're not trying to get rid of it. And that's important, because who wants to create or destroy things that are a threat? The ego does. That's what the ego does. The ego wants to destroy everything that's a threat. So when the ego runs into spirituality or being a good person or meditation, the ego will use that. It's called spiritual materialism. The ego will use anything. So that's where you get these sleazy spiritual types, right? Because they're using their ego, they're adopting spirituality into their black hole of narcissism.
Yes.
So the ego wants to destroy everything that is a threat to it. So if the ego is a threat, we want to destroy the ego, right? That's the ego pretending to destroy itself. It's not going to.
Okay.
So you make friends with your ego.
Okay.
Your ridiculousness, my insecurity, your insecurity, your not being perfect, my not being perfect, those are all things we can make friends with. Gentleness.
Yeah, of course.
So it's just like with being vegans, being an angry vegan activist, is actually hypocritical.
Yes.
Veganism is about love, caring
Yes.
about life. Aggression isn't that helpful. It doesn't mean you need to be weak, doesn't mean you need to be passive, but we want to make friends with our own failures. I like how you said it, check yourself. So in the practice of meditation, you're being aware of your ego.
Right.
You're not giving it a pass. You're not being like, we're friends, it's cool, do your thing. You're aware of it. And then you can, the second you're aware of your own insecurity, you're empathetic of other people's insecurity.
Right.
You see a wallflower at a party and you used to be that wallflower, or maybe you even are that night, and you say, oh, I care about that person, instead of being an insecure junior high ego jerk and being like, I'm not talking to the losers, you know?
Yeah.
I gotta hang out with the cool kids.
Yeah.
So ego and empathy are in direct opposition, but the solution to that is not to destroy the ego, but to make friends with it. That's called Maitri in Buddhism, making friends with yourself. Pema Chodron, PEMA, is the best teacher ever on all of this. Brene Brown, people are all excited about. She's great. Pema Chodron is like a giant compared to Brene Brown. And I don't mean, they're not competing. They wouldn't have, neither one of them would say that. But Pema is incredibly grounded in the actual practice of doing this.
Okay.
It's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing, and Brene embodies it, respect to Brene. This is not negative. It's really saying like, man, go to the source.
Yeah. The lineage, kind of.
Man, Pema is a rock star.
So where do you find that? Could you find talks on like Spotify or something?
There's this site called elephantjournal.com. Obviously you can Google stuff, but Google and YouTube, in my mind, are part of the problem.
Yeah.
Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp are part of the problem. Amazon and Audible are part of the problem. So go beyond the monopolies, go to independent journalism, media. But yeah, you can start with a Google search and you can use something like Ecosia, which is the eco search engine. It plants trees.
I did not know
Every time you
this.
search, it's planting a tree.
Stop that. No.
Seriously, Ecosia. Brought to you by Ecosia.
I had no idea. That's a real thing? How
Yeah.
come that's not more public information?
Firefox is an independent browser. They actually respect your rights. They don't use you like Google Chrome does or Safari Apple does.
Yeah.
So anyway, mindfulness can be expressed in every way. That's not even a segue. So ego, empathy. I love empathy. They call the most powerful transformative human emotion because it takes my pain or my joy or whatever and it connects with other people's pain or joy or whatever. And that is community. That's where if you're stressed out because you're a mom, you're doing your thing, you're working your butt off, isolation can really cook your stress. You don't get rid of it. When you have community, oh, you go through that too? That's catharsis. It turns, like I remember when Boulder got flooded, everyone's houses were flooded all over Boulder. There was a fair amount of suffering, people lost their homes. All of us were running around helping people, and in the process of helping someone who just got flooded, their depression, there was real depression and heartbreak and loss and struggle, flipped to them like figuring out how to make cookies in their messed up kitchen and bringing it out to everybody. And it was like community. Yeah. We saw that after 9/11. We saw that after the shootings in El Paso. Real community happens after tragedy, and that is empathy.
Yeah.
And that's the most magic thing on earth. To be fair, being alone is also beautiful, and you have to make friends with that in order to be a real member in a community.
Yeah. I always think of it when I'm teaching yoga in this way, like I do the work on my own time to fill my cup so that it only spills over into other cups and
Beautiful.
I'm not taking. You know what I mean? And because to teach yoga, it's a craft to hold space. You have to leave your shit out the door and hold space for everybody else's shit. Because you get so many different people at so many different points in their life coming to yoga class, and the movement through the hips and all of that can be really emotional. And, you can see it right when someone walks in. If it's their first yoga class, if they're being dragged there, if they're like loving it, or if they're the only ones in their whole life that are into it and no one else understands them, like you can feel it over time, immediately when people are walking in. So it's my job to create a safe space, which is kind of like what I think you've done with Elephant. Create a safe space for people to just be and not have to be pretentious or who they are at work. And I think in those transformative moments is when we really come back to the self, because yoga is Y-U-J, union, yoke. It's the understanding that we are all connected. It's oneness. So if you have hatred towards MAGA peeps or the person in front of you or the person that just flicked a cigarette butt on the ground, you're only causing suffering to yourself, because we are connected and they don't know you're upset, but you're fuming in your car. And so what is that really doing energetically in the world?
On your bike, but yeah.
On your bike, obvi. I think it's like, it doesn't happen overnight, but I think if you can keep your heart open enough, you'll see it really is so gravy. It's just like it unfolds, and like vegetarian or yoga led me to vegetarian led me to vegan led me to sustainable living, and veganism and sustainable living coupled led me to activism, which led me to this podcast. And I'm starting to get into inspirational speaking. So it's like it doesn't just happen.
Right.
Like you have to lay the bricks. And I'm starting to see that now more and more. And something that I've really enjoyed about this particular mindful community and what I'm trying to do is people like you are willing to lift up random people that happen to have your mission. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're rich, if you're well known, or whatever. If someone's heart is in the right place, you will use your platform to lift them up, and it's like all good. And so I'm starting to implement that with the platform I'm building to lift up other women who are floundering a little bit, but they're strong in their heart, and I understand what they're trying to do to catapult them. So there's just like no competition. It's like everyone in this community seems to be kind, and it's just like a circle. And I'm really digging it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to add to this podcast?
Well, I think mentoring, you referred to lifting other people up. Like when I was a kid in the 90s, there wasn't this mentoring culture. There really wasn't. There was no public sort of recognition that mentors were awesome. So when I was young, I didn't have a dad really, and I didn't have any business acumen. My mom knew nothing about money and didn't care, and still doesn't, which is admirable, but she didn't have that. And so I really sought out mentors, and I only found a couple really who actually cared, and their attitude wasn't like, I'm a good person, I'm going to care about you. Their attitude was like, if I don't train you with what I know, this work isn't going to continue.
Yeah.
And so I'm not doing it out of the goodness of my heart. I'm doing it super selfishly. Like the human tradition is the tradition of passing any torch of illumination that we've received, and we're grateful for having received it, to the next generation. And this isn't like, that's why LA, which I love, is hard for me after a few weeks, because it's so ambitious. We need to let go of our ambition, not in our lives. You can be ambitious about your career, ambitious about whatever, ambitious about your running, whatever. But ambition in the sense of kind of me versus you, and realize that if you're on basically the same page of trying to be of benefit to others, we all have to do it together, or it's not going to happen. And it actually, that's why I say we could save the whole world through our work, what we're writing, what we're sharing, what we're communicating, how we show up. And activists can look like anything. Activists can be on the front lines. They can run for office. They can,
run for city council.
Be a janitor.
Anything. Yeah, and you can be an activist in the way that you raise your kids. If you don't necessarily want to shout from the mountains, you can do it in your household. You can shout in your house. You can. And you do. So I think if I were to even have hints at competition and shutting women down who are different from me, it would be in direct confliction with the mission of my podcast, which is to empower women through cultural commentary and mindful living practices. Cool. Because that's what empowered me. I do have to say, though, I wrote a blog on Elephant called No Thanks. If there isn't simple appreciation, that's all. I get very Irish very quickly. What's that supposed to mean? Icy? The doors go down, and I could see that. The water stops running out of the pipe, to mix metaphors. Yeah, and I don't know if that's right or not, but I do know that it's important if you're receiving something from someone to be simply appreciative. You don't owe them anything unless that's been discussed and you're paying a
therapist or a life coach or whatever. And in that case, you really don't even have to be like, thank you so much, although it's always fine. But if you're paying someone for a service, that's an exchange. But it's always nice to be nice and thankful. But if someone asked me to meet with them tomorrow and for mentoring kind of stuff, like, oh, how do you do your blah, blah, blah. It's like, I'm pretty effing busy.
Yeah.
Working my butt off. And I'm not busy in a self-important way. I'm busy in the sense that I don't get to have vacations. I don't get to have deep relationships. I don't often get to work out or exercise in any way. I'm busy sacrificing my own life for this stuff.
And what you're doing is
and that's
for
not
everyone.
a poor me thing. I feel good about what I'm doing, but it is a sacrifice. Just like being a parent is a sacrifice. Being a teacher, my mom was a teacher, is a sacrifice. So when someone asks me for mentoring, I'm like, sure, I'd love to, but I do have time situation. And she took the time to be like, this is where I'm coming from, this is where I'm at, blah, blah, blah. And it was really good.
So you didn't have to navigate that yourself?
It was appreciative, or it was at least just good communication. So yes, then I'd do it. But if someone's like, hey, yo, meet me for whatever and talk about what, you're you got to stay focused to build something. So mentorees, is that the term? Mentees, thank you. Need to approach with some respect. If there's someone who's respect, just be appreciative. Same with your food. Like, don't just appreciate it.
That's Ayurveda. Smell it, enjoy the colors, and then it will give you the utmost of nutrients that it has to offer.
Rub it in your hair. Ayurveda.
Bathe in it.
Yeah.
In my 500
Put
hour...
some of it in your pockets.
Like Napoleon Dynamite. in my 500 hour training, we talked a lot about lineage.
Bark in the air randomly over
What?
your meal. I'm just thinking of weird Boulder people with their weird food habits. They take their huevos rancheros and they're like,
oh, I get it. Okay, I see what you're saying now. It's like, I'm picturing people sitting out on Pearl Street barking in the air. Thanks for explaining that.
We're gonna start a trend. People out there will start barking with the food. Yeah.
It's your turn, Vanessa.
It's just respectful.
Okay, so here's what has been the best advice I ever got in my life. You can't change people. You can only give them the tools to change themselves.
Right, but that comes back to the why people still eat meat or get plastic water bottles or fly in airplanes without offsetting it conversation.
So these are the tools.
They have the education.
But the education's not tools.
But they have the resources. They do.
Yeah, they have the resources, no doubt.
If you're flying without offsetting, you're crazy.
What's the quickest way, the most effective way to offset planetary?
There's articles about it on Elephant Journal.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, people have the education. Like you can't pretend like you don't know now. And for people who are just arriving to a more mindful lifestyle, to say, I always try to meet people where they are in their journey because I wasn't always doing the right things.
Well, and we're not right now. We're all on the path.
Yeah.
We're all imperfect.
Exactly. So I always try to meet people where they are and be compassionate.
You're perfect.
I'm not perfect. I'm not even close to perfect.
Needless to say.
But I try. I'm trying.
Look at the halo behind her.
It's a lamp. So I'm trying really hard to live the best version of my life. And
why not just live your life?
Well, because
why do you have to
I get off to challenging perspective. That's why. Because I cannot help but think maybe I'm ignorant about this and I don't realize it. So I'm always so eager and hungry to learn more.
Okay, that's a good definition of best. I feel like best can be, the living my best life can be a little bit like aggressive toward yourself.
Yeah,
Like make friends with who you are instead of trying to be like the perfect, the perfect people out there are boring, Like in, what was that comedy with Belushi, what is it? Anyway, the perfect frat boys and sorority girls, they're always boring. Who wants to be perfect? Be yourself, make friends with yourself. Animal House. Animal
House. I did not know you were going there. Okay.
The bad guys in those movies are always the perfect people, and I love that.
Yeah.
Because Belushi with his tummy and his farts and his whatever, that's human and that's fun. We're here to be yourself, not your best self.
Yeah.
And if your best self means learning and awakening, beautiful.
I think your best self is transformative, and you should always be. Not that I want to not be content with where I am. I'm just always trying to seek What don't I know? Where can I grow? Because I'm such a like public person. I'm actually quite.
You're huge.
I mean like with my voice. Like I am not shy. I will I will talk to a wall. And my dad's that way.
You might want to
not talk to walls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. What a waste of time. So my dad's that way, but it can be a lot to give your energy out so publicly and so deeply that I'm actually very private in a lot of different aspects of my life, which I'm sure you could probably relate to.
You wouldn't talk about like giving a blowjob to your husband.
You know what? I actually don't normally talk about. That's to me. That's not intimacy. Like that's like you went vegan. You know what I mean?
So what is intimacy to you? That's interesting.
I think intimacy is connection and understanding someone's mind, and then that just translates physically. You know what I mean?
Beautiful.
Yes. I just read your book, so I'm on an intimacy high. Things I would like to do with you. Go check it out. Anyways.
Thanks for getting the title right. People all the time are like, "Oh yeah, you wrote this book, Things I Want to Do with You." I'm like, no, it's not things I want to do with you. Yeah, there's a list of things I want to do with you. Let's go to 7-Eleven, then let's go to Dairy Queen, then let's head over to the mall.
You don't even speak that way. Like, you don't, your sentence structure isn't even like that. Okay, so we're coming to a close. First of all, before I do my ending stuff, is there anything that you would like to share? Anything left for you?
Is there something you'd like me to share?
No. Well, why don't you share all your stuff, like Elephant Academy and, your things.
So we do have a school at Elephant, thank you for asking, called Elephant Academy. And I always say if people did what they loved, not in an ideal way, in a way that paid their bills, in a practical way, that was a benefit and something they loved doing, were good at, we would no longer need to exploit the world. If we actually felt good about what we did every day, and it paid the bills, we would no longer have to exploit the world. You exploit the world because the age-old argument is, I gotta earn a paycheck to pay for my family. That's a beautiful motivation for doing really unbeautiful things.
Really unbeautiful things.
Throughout history. Yeah. Really awful things. So that's called right livelihood or ikigai in Japanese. And why it's such a powerful concept is it's not an ideal. It has to pay the bills. Again, it's not just a privilege like, let's do, I want to do some thing that isn't useful to anybody.
Right.
So we train people in that. We have live writing courses where we help people find their voices, which can help, as you know, create abundance, if you like that word, in your business, whatever that business is. So that's Elephant Academy. I did write a book, Things I Would Like to Do With You, and it's been a bestseller. It's an eco book, which is very rare. It's printed 22 blocks from our office, which is very rare. Most books are printed over in China. God knows about the paper, plastic
glue,
plastic wrap,
people just don't talk about this stuff.
We don't talk about it. We all think books are like old-fashioned and beautiful. Oh yeah, I read books. I'm so much better.
I will say your book is old-fashioned and beautiful in the writing. I mean, if I didn't know you, I would feel like I was reading something from like 400 years ago.
Right.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. I'm a very old soul. And then, Elephant Journal is literally a platform or a community for you guys, you gals. So you can write on it, just like on Instagram, instantly, elephantjournal.com/post. You should be on there. You can get our newsletter, elephantjournal.com/best. Our newsletter is our best stuff every day. My editor's letter is in there every day. And that's probably plenty. So thank you so much. It's an honor.
It's an honor for me.
Mutual honor.
I end each episode with 3 deep breaths and a namaste, sister.
All right.
You want to do it? Okay.
Yeah, please.
All right. But you have to say namaste, sister, with me in unison. Okay. All right. Soften your chest. Soften the brow. Relax the hips. Relax the jaw. Re-soften the brow. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Namaste, sister.
Namaste, sister.
I knew that
Sorry.
wasn't gonna happen.
I was too in the breath.